Yes, Fire Flower. It's on now. One up, Art. Come back. Well, it looks like it's time for another episode of
Legends of Game Genie.
For all of you who took the time to vote at Gamesboro.net for what game you wanted to see this week, I sincerely appreciate it. And now for the payoff. Your winner is Super Mario Land 2, the 6 golden coins for the original Game Boy. You probably already figured that out because of the thumbnail, but I digress. I've taken the time to research some really fun gameplay changing mechanics for this one. I think you're gonna dig it. The main two codes we are going to be using today are Moon Jump. This is a 2-line code. Line 1, 80635E E6C. Line 2, 18616E 6EA. And stay as Fire or Bunny Mario when hit. Line 3, FA1 CBC 4C1. Feel free to pause the video now to grab these codes, or as always, check out the description of the video on YouTube. So, infinite lives. This one isn't really necessary with the other codes I'm using. It is still possible to lose lives though, taking a hit at the beginning of the game before you pick up your first mushroom, like right here, and the much more common falling to your doom. The game has a few bottomless pits that you could fall into that will instantly take you out. Perfect example right here of grabbing the mushroom and getting the ability to throw fireballs. As you probably know by now, the codes I like to discuss aren't always the ones to make the game as easy as it could possibly be. But instead, I'm big on finding codes that are fun to use, like the Moon Jump here. This is by far the best code for this game. The way it works is as long as you are pressing the jump button, you continue to gain altitude, and as soon as you let off the button, you begin to fall. At any time during the fall, you can press the jump button again and start ascending, just like if you were on the ground. Combining this with the fireballs turns Mario into a fire-breathing dragon raining hellfire all over these mushroom-shaped dopes. You are about to see an example of staying as Fire or Bunny Mario when hit. So, why is this one such a big deal? Well, it isn't. Until you get to the last level. The difficulty ramps up so quickly and so viciously, you need this code to tip the scale in your favor. This code and Moon Jump are your key to success, and my two personal favorite codes for Super Mario Land 2. Yes, a complete invincibility code exists, but it takes up all 3 lines using original Game Genie hardware. For you purists wanting to use real hardware, that's just a no-go. I'll throw the completely invincible code in the description as well for funsies, but just keep this in mind. Yeah, you get that bell, Mario.
Big Loud scores! And the crowd goes bananas!
Let's talk about the Game Boy Game Genie itself. It has a couple of features that are going to be clutch in Mario Land 2. Number 1, the button labeled codes on/off. This wasn't an option on the NES version of the Game Genie, and why it's so important here is it will disable your codes in real time as you're playing the game. In the case of Mario Land 2, if you want to complete the game, you have to disable the codes after you defeat Wario. Number 2, the Game Boy Game Genie only allows 3 lines of codes to be entered, and the most important code we're going to work with today, obviously, is Moon Jump. That requires 2 out of the 3 lines. That means you're left with only enough space for 1 more code. And that is why I think that code should be used for Stay as Fire or Bunny Mario when hit. For those of you who are emulating or using a device such as the Mister, you aren't going to run into the issue of not having enough lines, as they generally let you use as many codes as you want. I've tested the codes I'm showing you today in combination with each other, and haven't had any issues other than the need to turn the codes off at the very end of the game. Just look at this. Remember that fire-breathing dragon analogy I brought up earlier? This is a perfect example. Because the game was designed for flight because of the bunny ears power-up, it handles Moon Jump very well. In the first stage, if you fly too high up at the very beginning, the game gets a little weird. It acts like you entered a pipe going up and then the same coming back down, it doesn't break anything, it's just a little strange. Most likely because you aren't supposed to be able to fly that early in the game. Everywhere else though, it's open season, no real glitches or bugs, just regular old Game Boy slowdown every once in a while. But hey, if you're used to playing 8-bit games, you know that's just the hand that we were dealt back then. Even the bosses can't do anything to you. I guess you could croak if the timer runs out, but that's a whole lot of time hanging out with this weirdo. The spikes on the ceiling that are the big threat in the normal game have virtually no effect on you here. I'm going to throw a couple more codes at you here that I tried out and were cool, but I didn't include officially because they are really only good for emulators. They can be used on a real Game Genie, but at the expense of almost anything else. The codes will be in the description. Number 1, always have fireballs. This is a good one in case you accidentally grab a carrot and end up with bunny ears. Number 2, complete Invincibility. Of course, if you want to roast the game beginning to end, this is your code. Like I said earlier, this one is best on an emulator or MiSTer because it takes a whopping 3 lines. That would be literally every line available to you on actual hardware just for this one code. Now here is literally every code we talked about today running at the same time. Mario is now a Game Boy god among shrooms. With the Invincibility, notice that while you don't take damage, you can still interact with enemies. You can still squash them or even pick up shells. I love finding a long string of question blocks like this and just holding down the jump button while pressing right or left. Very satisfying for some reason. Oh yeah. Time to tackle the final stage. As mentioned earlier, without the Game Genie, this is a really tough level. Maybe a little too tough. I was playing this on a plane recently, playing this on an analog pocket, and made it all the way to this stage and just couldn't beat it. I tried over and over again, and every time I would fail somewhere along the line. It's brutal, and it's why I picked Mario Land 2 as one of the games I wanted to cover for this series. You'll make short work of this stage with a couple of exceptions. Right about here, it's very easy to hit the bottom of the screen before you press the jump button. I know this because it happened to me, but luckily with the power of video editing, I was able to spare you from seeing me disgrace myself. Wario. Yikes. He looks like one of those toys where you squeeze the body and the eyes and ears bulge out. He looks like a Funko Pop after it got ran over by a car. He looks like a troll doll if you shaved its head and dressed it up like Mario. I kinda wish they stuck with this design because he is just so damn bizarre. Wario doesn't look like anything else in the game. Love the huge sprite though, very cool for a Game Boy game. You have to fight him 3 times. He uses the power-ups that Mario was able to get his hands on, such as the carrot. Doesn't matter though. You're gonna blast his dumb ass with fireballs and jumping on his head. Who put these chandeliers in here? Was it Mario before Wario took over his castle? If so, I bet he regrets that decision now. I find the sprite work in this game to be spectacular, some of the best in the entire library of original Game Boy games. Nintendo really went above and beyond with this one. This is the part where Wario turns into an alien baby and throws a shoe like Tony Storm in an interview before Dr. Wilying out of the room.
Shut up! Thank you for your time, Tony. Okay guys, back to you.
Now's the time to press the code on-off button on your Game Genie or use the equivalent function in your emulator or MiSTer. If not, the game sends you into the clouds just like you see here. Don't worry, this isn't a timing thing. You will just stay up here until you hit the button. Then you'll fall back to the ground and get the ending. I want to give a couple of shout-outs to those that unknowingly helped with this video. GameHacking.org. It's an amazing site for all things in regards to game cheats, and it's my primary source for finding cool codes to cover in my videos. The game hacking legend Nolberto82 for making the moon jump code. This wasn't a code that came in the Game Genie manual. This guy figured it out and made it happen. The guy is a code-making machine. I know a lot of you voted for X-Men Mutant Apocalypse for the Super Nintendo and Ghostbusters for Genesis. In fact, those 2 games tied for 2nd place. Well, no worries. You'll see those videos in the future. sooner rather than later. I've already started doing some research on both these games. Well, that's it, folks. Thanks for stopping by, and we will see you next time on
Legends of Game Genie.